Informative, educational, objective, inclusive, comprehensive. This is Progress Report. Updates and conversations from the Government Information Service.
Good day and welcome to another episode of Progress Report. My name is Ivan Khanna, my lovely co-host Gleneva Hodge, and we have with us, back for the very first time, I gotta say it twice, back for the very first time, by the rappers, Ms. Chanel Petty Barrett, the PS in the Ministry of Economic Development.
Yes.
People don't really understand what economic development is. Mm-hmm. Last time you were here, we touched on some different subjects.
Yes.
But in your remit as PS of Economic Development, a very important role, function, falls under you. That was, I think, was most recently instituted with GST, right? Mm-hmm. And we're going to get into that today.
Yes.
Because I see a lot of things popping up, and I don't think people understand the avenues that have been made available for entrepreneurs, manufacturers, in this case in point, to actually get some stuff. So those out there making dresses, making soaps, why is them does manufacture here?
Quite a bit of things.
A lot of things.
That's what I
drinks,
didn't know.
cosmetics, all sorts of things. Yeah.
So
Blocks, glass, aluminum,
all sorts of things.
so we have boats, right? We have access within industry. So when people saying that our Angola is tourism, that ain't really true. We have things that are budding, seedlings, some underground. So we can get into that today.
Yes.
Because with the institution of GST, if I want to call it that, there were some benefits created for the manufacturing sector. Do you know about these, Gleneva?
So I am thankful that I have heard a little bit about it, but I'm really looking forward to today and learning a bit more. I will say I've been able to peruse some documents, but there's things on paper, and then when you can get the meat of it, I'm looking forward to really understanding more of what it is I have read, and for our listening audience and viewing audience to really understand and appreciate what's there, and especially those persons who are affected by this and how they can benefit. So I'm really looking forward to this discussion, understanding what exactly it is. So I think that's where we're going to start, because Ivan alluded to it. What exactly is this that we are speaking about?
Okay, so if you allow me a little to go back a bit, and I have to acknowledge the work of Minister Kyle Hodge, who would have been the Minister of Economic Development, because it started with him. Now continuing with the Honorable Premier, who is the Minister responsible for Economic Development now. So one of the mandates that was clear to us when the new administration took office in 2020 was that there was a greater thrust or push towards economic diversification and trying to ensure that various sectors are supported in one way or the other. One of those sectors being the manufacturing sector. Because while we don't have large-scale manufacturing like other countries in the region, we do recognize that there are a lot of what we call cottage industries in Angola, which we understand would need some level of support. So very early on, myself, the minister, and the commerce officer would have gone having one-on-one visits with manufacturers. We actually went to their places of business, spoke with them, see what they were doing, and asked, what sort of support do you need from government? And for the most part, many of them indicated that their two highest costs included custom duties on imports and their energy costs. So So those are things that we started to look at, and we started to work on a manufacturing policy. As a result of that, we also had some consultations with manufacturers at the ministry, where we would have asked them to we previously asked them to complete a manufacturing survey because we wanted to see what sorts of things they were importing. And we had a subsequent consultation with them to get their views, to hear what they wanted to see in terms of support, etc. And this was also an attempt to get to those who we hadn't been able to visit, so we can get more input that way. So based on the input, we would have looked at two issues. One, customs duty, and we also looked at what was happening in relation to GST. GST was coming on stream, and we knew that this would add to the burden that we already have. So as part of the GST regulations, there was a carve out, especially for manufacturers, in that their imports would be zero rated. And we were very adamant that this should take place because we recognize that if they already have a challenge with the duties, if we added a GST, it would be an additional challenge for them.
Right.
So the GST regulations does make provision for the inputs of manufacture to be zero rated, but those inputs have to be approved by the Ministry of Economic Development. And that is where the policy comes in, because we would have had to develop a framework by which this would be administered. So basically, what we did, based on the consultations that we had and looking at the various manufacturing businesses that are operating, we started to zero in on those that showed the most growth potential, because we have to start somewhere.
Exactly.
Yes, we can't do everything all at once, so rather than do nothing at all, we start somewhere. So we started to look at those in particular. And we applied the policy to those particular businesses. And let me remind myself of what they are. So they include manufacture of bakery products. So bakeries are eligible. If you do cakes and breads and pies and all of those things, pastries, you're eligible.
You're trying to make us hungry.
Also,
Go ahead.
persons who are manufacturing confectionaries. So if you're doing things like ice cream, ice pops, things that you could pick up in the freezer, things like that.
Does that confectionery, does that also include things like candy, sweets?
Yes, so things like that. Condiments and preserves. So if you're doing things like jams and pepper sauces and
Fire farm,
yes, things like that.
Right.
Those would qualify. Manufacturer of beverages. So like persons like, what's his name? They're on the Coronation Avenue. He's my cousin, but I can't remember his name. Oh my God. Yes, himself. I couldn't remember that name. I know him as Dion. Something Dion.
Who's Dion?
Bottled water, there are lots of other people like I think the juice bar does beverages, and I think D&Ds and those sorts of people.
And so these beverages, are those also alcoholic beverages, any kind of beverages? So I know the guys Cleve, and I can never pronounce, they have a new product that's coming out. I never could pronounce the name of it, but okay, so it includes
an alcoholic product that I don't know about.
We'll
find out soon. So those are included, as well as manufacture of textiles. So the tailors, persons who are
seamstress, tailors.
Exactly. If you're doing leather goods, those are covered as well.
Yeah, I know. Recently there was someone, I think Pedro, started making bags.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Printing. So printed products. So if you are doing things like books or T-shirts and stuff like that, you're eligible as well. Cosmetics. This is a growing industry in Angola.
Yeah.
So people doing soaps and perfumes and different things.
So this is
body butters and all of those things.
So these have to be manufactured here. This isn't, just for clarity, these on eyelashes and the
No.
Just the raw
yes.
input products.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then things like blocks and concrete, because we know that we have those as well. Gates and railings, so things with aluminum products, metal products, so things
glass
like gates
and
railings and stuff like that. Concrete, cement, plaster, fabricated metal products. Not glass yet.
Not glass
yet. and boats. So yeah,
Everything with boats.
boats.
So that is quite quite a long list.
Yeah.
But as Ivan was asking about glass,
Yes.
and you kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. We started somewhere.
Yes.
We now have to see how this works before we can expand.
Exactly.
So I know I've received questions from persons who do work with glass. They work with it's almost like resin and wood,
Yes.
where they provide things for the
Like craft.
the craft and for
Yes.
tourist industries.
Yes.
Is there room for expansion to include them once we see that this takes off?
Yes, I mean, as I said, the intention is to start with this. We're going to see how this works. And if there's a need to extend and broaden, then, those can come on board as well. Because we do recognize that there are quite a few people who are involved in making craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can think of a
Yes.
few off the top of my head,
Yes.
especially down at Salsa and Sands, just
Yes.
speaking with
Yes.
I think he's expanded and he does jewelry
Yes.
and that sort of
Yes.
stuff.
Yes.
So I'm
Yes, so
certain
those-
persons like
yes.
that would look forward to
That
the
support.
expansion.
Yes.
So without them being on the list right now, somebody has a unique need. You often talk about, you get up when we had the comptroller for IRD here, you get up and you have an idea, but it's not included in the tariffs and all these type of things. Now, how can you apply individually for consideration, given?
Not with this exemption, not with this zero rate, because it's specific under the GST regulations.
Okay, so I have to go back to the.
Yeah, so we have to be cautious as to how it's applied.
Okay.
If it is that we need to extend the exemption, we'll have Executive Council approval, and then we go from there.
Okay.
So it can't be done administratively by us in-house. It'll have to go through a process in
Okay.
order for that to
So
come
what
on stream.
what kind of support can be lent immediately to those blockbuster ideas that would just happen on the fly and make sense, and then persons like, okay, it's cost prohibitive in this area, can I approach government for duty-free exemption to start, perhaps? People often comment and say, well, the hotels just get everything.
I know.
So
I know.
can that process,
I
can you
know.
apply in applying for your business license and make consideration and go through those means? I think people.
I know that I can't speak definitively on the duty-free exemptions component, because that's usually handled by the Ministry. It is handled by the Ministry of Finance, but I know that they're trying to update their policy in relation to
Yes.
that, looking at how we can better support new businesses.
Yes.
Even if it's just a one-time thing for startups, how we could actually.
I've had earshot of that
Yes.
conversation. That's
So
what I kind of
that's
brought
something
up.
that we can, once we get the persons from Ministry of Finance,
Yes.
in,
Yes.
that's something that we can definitely elaborate on and
Yes.
kind of flesh out with
Yes.
them and ensure that the public is aware of what processes. But going back to this specific
Yes.
policy, so I have a business, I fall under this particular policy.
Yes.
I am approved, shouldn't say approved for exemption, but I qualify for the exemption.
Yes.
What is the process to ensure that I get those exemptions? Do I just say, well, hey, I have a business, I produce blocks, and I just import my stuff and go to customs and say, well, I produce blocks, and the legislation says I'm exempted. What is the process? Do I
Okay.
just go and say, oh, I don't have to pay you?
Well, it's a simple process, actually. So persons can obtain an application form from our ministry. The executive secretary assistant is the person who distributes the form. So once she's contacted, and I'll share her email address later, but once she's contacted, she'll share the form. Persons just fill in the form. It's a very simple form. So you have to include, of course, who you are, the name of your business, what exactly are you manufacturing, and you're going to list exactly what it is that you want to import. And we encourage persons to be as specific as possible.
10-inch
Don't just
screws.
say tools.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
we need to know exactly what those tools are.
Okay.
And you also have to list your employees. And why that is because part of this is to generate employment for local persons. And we want to ensure that in terms of your employment ratio of Anguillian to non-Anguillian, that it's at least 1-to-1. So for every non-Anguillian you have, you should have an Anguillian.
I have a little problem with that.
Tell
I'll
me.
be honest. Some of these industries
Yes.
require special skill sets.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, so there's consideration made.
Yes.
Okay, good. That's
Yes.
why I need to get rid of it, because I
Yes.
get a call when this drop. They say, "Lord, I am wicked." I got call him name. He say, "I know I can't find."
I probably got that same
Oh.
call.
Okay, so just making sure, like,
Yes,
there are
because
specialist fees that we are aware of.
Because we did at first consider a ratio of 3-to-1, Anguillian to non-Anguillian.
Yeah.
But then in discussing with the Labor Department, we realized that this is a bit of a challenge for some people.
Yeah.
And so we revised that to 1-to-1.
Right.
So at least a ratio of 1-to-1.
Okay.
We can't have a situation where you have more non-Anguillians than Anguillians, and we're supporting that.
Well, but the census will tell us if them Anguillian are there.
So that has to be there.
Okay, that's
So,
good. I'm happy to hear that.
yes,
Because
so
I had
we
heard
made-
about the 3-to-1 thing, and
Yes.
make sure you clear that out. They ain't gonna call me after
we
this
made
show.
that adjustment, so
Okay,
it's
good.
1-to-1, right?
Perfect.
Okay.
And the persons, of course, have to have a valid business license. So make sure your business is registered as a manufacturing business. Yeah. And also, they have to provide a tax clearance certificate when they are making the application.
So let's do a little
Yes.
pause here. This tax clearance, they get that from IRD.
IRD.
And the process is what? Do you know what the process is?
For IRD?
No, for the tax clearance.
Clearance. I think you just fill out a form or whatever, and the IRD just checks to see what outstanding taxes you have for the government.
That's it.
And if you're clear, then it's cleared. And if you've made arrangements to pay, they also issue the certificate saying you've made satisfactory arrangements to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think there's a fee.
Yeah, I think there's a
not-
fee for it as well, but I'm
I
not
would
sure
hope there's a
much,
fee.
how much the fee is.
I can't.
Paper
It's
is...
$50, but don't quote me on that.
I know. There was a figure running wrong in my head, but I
Yeah.
think I may be wrong on that.
Paper ain't free.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. This application, though, there's not a fee attached to our process.
okay.
Yeah, so you fill in the application, you bring the documents, as I said, your tax clearance, your valid business license, your employee ratio, and once you're compliant with the work permit requirements, it's fine. So once we get you a list of goods and everything is in order, we ourselves do some research on your list to verify that these are things that are related to the industry in which you operate.
Yeah, you just don't add
So you ain't bringing in some extra stuff. on that.
Exactly. So we're trying to verify that. So we take a couple of days to do that. But generally the turnaround time is a week. So if you apply on a Monday, you should be able to get through by Friday once we have everything in order.
Is customs looped into this conversation post acceptance into this policy or program? Because
So what happens is that once the persons are approved, they get a manufacturing certificate issued to them. And the certificate would say that you are exempt from GST in relation to these imports. And at the back of the certificate is a list of imports.
and they carry that to
And
the
they
port.
carry that when they are presented to customs.
Okay, good. So they're
Yes.
gonna copy that a couple of times because that get with them coming back.
I was actually going to ask, because this application, is it a one-time application, or is it application on every time you need to import something?
Okay, so I need to clarify that. So the application, and please, persons, if you're listening, do not wait until you have something sitting down on the payer to contact us in relation to
Oh, we'll
this.
come to that.
Right?
Okay.
This is really supposed to work on an annual basis.
Okay.
So from now, the certificates will expire at the end of each year, just like a business
Just
license.
Okay.
So on December 31st, your certificate will no longer be valid. You need to
Okay.
come again and reapply,
So-
right?
So it's-
But it's valid for a year. And in that year, you don't have to come to us for anything. You just go and present your certificate to customs when you're importing, and they'll allow it on that basis.
So I have a
please
question.
don't wait until your stuff is here.
I got a question.
You got one and I have one.
Okay, so not everybody's business license expires at the end of the year, correct?
Yes, that is correct, because some persons pay quarterly. Yes.
So,
but that is okay.
Okay.
That is okay. Yes.
all right, that's all I wanted to
Yeah, that is fine.
So
Once when you come to us, it's valid, it's fine.
Okay.
Yes.
So this tells me that it requires some level of planning and foresight in terms of what you will need to import for the year. I'm drawing my mind to maybe a bakery, someone who does cakes.
Yes.
And these trends pop up. All of a sudden, I see these pretty cakes, and all of these fancy trends pop up.
Yes.
And in the middle of the year, you get an order for later in the year. So in July, you get an order for September, for something that you have not done before, which requires some sort of
fondant.
tool, or most of them will have fondant.
I just wanted to say the word fondant. That I know what fondant is. Okay, carry on.
Yes, but some sort of tool or some sort of material that you've not used or worked with before. So when you made your application at the beginning of the year,
Yes.
this particular tool or material was not included in your list. How does that manufacturer deal with that? Because
Okay.
that item isn't listed at the back of their certificate.
Yes. So they'll have to make a special request and outline exactly why it is that this is something, as you said, new has popped up and they want to include.
Okay.
Because we'll have to then go back and adjust their certificate. But that is not something that we want to encourage because we definitely don't want a lot of back and forth.
Yes.
The process is we're trying to be as seamless and simple as possible rather than have persons having the hassle of every time they want to import something, they have to come and get approval. We really try as much as possible to move away from that. So we're encouraging persons to be as comprehensive as they can in relation to their list. I have to point out as well here that it is not every single thing that persons ask for that they're going to get. And that is simply because we also have to be mindful of the local retail sector. So if there are items that are easily purchased locally, that might not be something that we approve because we
Okay.
have to be conscious of that.
Okay.
I'm
as
happy
well.
that you said that
Yes.
because in the is it a department? I don't want to call it a ministry of economics. Is it a ministry? Because it's all under finance.
Yes,
now.
it's part of the ministry. It's the Ministry of Finance, Economic Development and Health.
Okay,
Yes.
so where economic development is concerned,
Yes.
it's not just about imports. It's about the
Yes.
longevity
Yes.
and the sustainability of businesses in
Exactly.
general on the ground.
Exactly.
So you have a responsibility to those as well.
Yes.
Saying that to say, Gleneva touched on something, and I thought I should have used the pun a little earlier up when she started talking about the meat, right? We don't have what do you call it? I think we're the slaughter again.
Abattoir.
Abattoir.
We don't have an abattoir here, but we have a lot of people producing eggs and those type of things.
Yes.
What provisions are made under this current policy for those?
Okay. So, under the GST regulations as well, and under the customs legislation, there are exemptions for farmers and fishers.
Right.
Yes. So for inputs for both agriculture and fishing, persons are able to get the exemptions both on duties and on GST.
Nice.
So the way that process works is a bit different from this,
Okay.
in that those are established lists approved in the House of Assembly, spelled out in the GST regulations and spelled out in the resolution from the House of Assembly. And those lists are with customs. So when persons import, customs would check the lists and see what is supposed to be applied to them. The farmers and fishers have to have for the fishers they have to have their fishing license, and for the farmers they have to be registered with the Farmers Association.
Okay.
So they have to have their registration card for presentation.
Okay, one little plug
Yes.
here before I go back over to Gleneva, because this is our show. I don't know if you realize. I'm just here holding space. You mentioned fishing.
Yes.
Fishing requires boats. the policy speaks to boat production. Some fishermen build their own boats. They don't necessarily go to Rebel Marine or to Leeward Boats. Can't remember what Rasmond Boat Company name is. So, but they have to bring in the same products: resin, fiberglass, honeycomb, whatever that will go into a boat. How can they benefit?
That is interesting. Because then we have to do a balance. I'm just thinking this through as a
Of course, that's what happens here on Progress Report. We get deep in the conversation and see things that we don't necessarily see.
Yes, because we have to think that through as well. Because do we want to necessarily, not that you want to disempower people from doing their own thing, but we also want to encourage persons to use your local boat manufacturer
I agree.
to build your boats.
But a fisherman will put in
Yes.
5 hours a evening, get his
Yes.
cousins from down the road.
Yes.
He can cut the hull to what he wants. He can build it to what he
Yes.
wants, as opposed to going down the road and
Yes.
spending $30,000. He can spend $10,000 with 30 cousins to help him.
And that
How
may be
are we
the
gonna
case.
stop that?
That may be I don't know if we can stop that. But the reality is that under the current arrangements, that would not be covered.
Okay, so your
'Cause
business
you
license have to say that you're a boat manufacturer, not a
Yes,
fisherman.
exactly.
Not a fisherman, okay.
Yeah, and remember, fishermen don't get business licenses.
Right. So that's something I wanted to get out there because I know a couple of them building their boats. Well, okay, I wouldn't touch that here because I know the answer to that. I was going to ask about the fish pot way and stuff, but that's covered under
Yeah, that's covered
the
already.
GST.
Yes, and the customs exemption.
Right.
I think what I appreciate from the conversation is that sometimes there's a lot of balancing acts
Yes.
that needs to be taken into consideration. You have to take into consideration, how do we promote what already exists in our
Yes.
local industries that already exist, while still empowering others to be able to carry on with their trade.
Their trade.
So I do appreciate that, and I am very cognizant of time today. This is probably going to be, the radio stations are going to love us today. This is probably going to be one of our shortest episodes.
Yeah,
But
we have
we have a few more minutes.
Yes.
And so, is there anything else under this manufacturing policy that you think is important for people to know? Have persons been applying in the way that you think that you anticipated?
Well, we anticipated a lot more applications than we've already processed. And the ones that came in, were not a problem at all. Those persons have already gone with their certificates and benefiting from the exemption. So we really want to encourage more persons to apply.
I think that's
One
because
thing,
the PRO isn't doing his job.
well, maybe that may be the case, yeah.
Yeah.
We have to look into that.
We have to look into that. Such a slacker.
So we want to encourage more persons to apply, and there's one thing that I need to alert persons to as well. One of the requirements for the renewal of the certificate is for persons to complete the annual business survey that is normally issued by the Statistics Department. And that is a way of us being able to, not only is it beneficial and all businesses are supposed to do it in any event, but it's really a way of us getting the information that we need to sort of assess how well this is working. Yes, so it's important from that perspective for us, for persons to make sure that they are compliant with that aspect as well. Yes.
I have a question now. So, truth be told,
Yes.
Angola's population is, let me not be facetious, Angola's population is not known, but it's under 15,000, if you're being realistic. You have a lot of manufacturing companies and businesses popping up.
Yes.
But the dollar to be made can only be made so much here in Angola. You buy a soap today, you're going to need another one for another week and a half, right? But nobody's producing 10 soaps. They're producing large scale because when you look at things, it
Yes.
makes sense to produce in bulk.
Yes.
How does this impact exports?
Well, there's no GST currently on export, so
Okay.
that is clear. But in relation to customs duties, it is still a work in progress.
Okay.
And I say that from the perspective of both imports and exports. Currently, the businesses are still required to pay customs duty. We're hoping to change that soon.
Say that again?
we're hoping to change that soon.
Exclusive.
I don't want the PS to take away because I'm hoping to have the controller of customs come on. You say this is my show, so
this is your show.
You know we do the schedule.
I just make the calls. Yeah, she needs to.
Yes, because we're collaborating with. Although we're leading because it's manufacturing, we're still leading on that. But we're collaborating with the Ministry of Finance in relation to seeing how we could walk through some exemptions for the manufacturers as well. Because that was the original intention, for there to be both the custom duty exemption and the GST exemption. It so happened that we were able to progress the GST exemption.
Because that legislation was low.
It's a little less complicated than the customs exemption. You see, in this case, for example, it's a little more, as I was saying, for the farmers and fishers. Because you're farming, you're fishing, there are things that are standard for that sector. But when you're manufacturing so many different products, it's hard to have a standard.
And then there are international tariffs as well that you have to pay.
Exactly. It's hard to have like a standard list that applies for. Yes.
Let me ask you something here. Sorry, but this is how we get into problems.
Yes.
Let's be fair. Let's be honest.
Yes.
One of the things that happened here in Anguilla, you start making pigeon pea soup tomorrow. You puree your pigeon peas, local fresh pigeon pea, chowder. Let's call it a pigeon pea chowder. Just going out there with any weird thing. 2 people come down the road, taste this. Oh my God, how you do this? And you are happy-go-lucky Anguillian. Girl, I remember my mother used to think I had lighted taste, and I just add a little bit of this, I add a little bit of that. 2 weeks later, and somebody else's menu is pigeon pea puree, pigeon pea chowder, whatever they want to call it. They're going to call it pea of the oil. They're going to find some way to mix it and max it, right?
Yes.
Is there any way or any protection mechanisms built into this that would promote not only healthy competition, but a measure of economic protection? Do we say, okay, we done got 10 people producing blocks here in Anguilla. We don't need another.
Not in this particular policy, but under the business licensing legislation, right? There is provision for government to be able to put in place moratoriums, etc. There's also provision for government to be able to reserve certain industries for local enterprise. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody else can come into that area, but it does mean that they're going to pay a much higher cost.
But what about
like 5 times the cost? Well, there are mechanisms built in to minimize that. I can't say that they're going to be foolproof, but there are mechanisms built in to minimize that.
And my reason for asking that is because I firmly believe Anguilla for Anguillians. Go ahead.
See, no, this is where I'm going to get in trouble. I usually try to stay away from controversial things.
No, it's not.
But I have dealt with in my professional capacity. You know, when persons come in to register businesses, and so you have shareholders. And one of the things that I've always said to persons who come in, and there may be somebody who have the cash capital influx into our business, and I say to them, and hope I don't get in trouble because there's a lawyer here, but I always say, you have equity because someone may have the cash capital, but they still can't start that business without an Anguillian. And so your equity is your citizenship. And so I always encourage persons when they're doing it to ensure that they have, because once you are a shareholder, that is your right. It's a legally binding something. And so I always take umbrage with the term fronting, because if you are a shareholder, I am no longer fronting. That is my equity.
I understand.
So that is why currently, under the new business license legislation, once there's a business that is jointly held by an Anguillian and a non-Anguillian, you have to have a company. So we could see that shareholder breakdown. Yeah, we need to
and then do you get their resolutions and their annual returns and check that say at the first meeting, X transferred X amount of his shares to B,
Well, there shows
those things have to come up in their annual returns.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want people to know that I just ask those open questions so people to know they ain't gonna say about he eating lunch now he gotta have no. There are mechanisms, controls in place.
Yes.
I keep saying government doesn't do things on a whim, in a fancy, and willy-nilly. Because you pointed that out earlier. I heard a lot about this. I remember when you sent me the initial document of this. I remember conversations with the farmer minister, and I'm like, okay, this stuff is happening. And then I had to hear, I didn't hear nothing about this. I'm like, people just make me feel bad. I'll be like, I ain't doing my job.
I'll say this is why these programs and this program exists to allow if departments and ministries see that they have a program that's out there and they're not seeing attraction, you have the opportunity to come in and, I'll tell you, I met the PS in the parking lot and I said, there's something else that I want to bring her back on. And she's like, not quite yet, but there's this one, it's not getting attraction. And I'm like, great, let's schedule. And I'm always grateful for, and Ivan, I am going to tell you, you have to be mindful of time.
I know, we out of time. But confession is good for the soul, people. You heard her say just now, she attacked the PS in the parking lot.
I did not say I attacked her. I met her in the parking lot.
I tell her you have to be back on the show because I want to talk about this and that. When I say this stuff, people think I just be joking. But God sent a Daniel this morning, and you heard it from the source that is not me. It's not me. But this is excellent. I am going to follow up with you later today before the end of the week. Get some information. Let's use the channels again, push it out there.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of people can benefit from this. I know even going into the tourist season, you have a lot of things popping up. I'm excited that Gleneva asked about the crafts and those little things. Let's have those conversations. Let's make it walkable for everyone, because that's extremely important.
Yes.
And I'm excited. No, I'm honestly excited because you call a number of industries there that are beneficial. And the person should understand that part of doing this is to provide a measure of ease for the manufacturing sector, but it's just a slight touch at introducing a little bit of price oversight, not price control, because then if you're getting these if you're getting these exemptions and these commitments and these measures of relief from government, you should be able to keep your prices. And to be entirely honest, I would like to see somebody from Anguilla competing with Dove soaps. I would like to see a hotel take on these soaps. And
I will tell you, there's is it Carabella, and then there is also the Bathhouse. I recently saw that one, and I'm really excited to go and try their products as well. So I think Capchuluca uses a local product when it comes to their cosmetics, their lotions and that stuff.
Some of them have deals with hotels, etc.
Okay, that's awesome. So I want to see some expansion. Then I want to see them in Divi, Carina Bay. That still exists. I don't go say nothing like that. I want to see them in other hotels around. Let's continue to see some. I want to see a big factory built here. I need to see something coming out of Anguilla. And if it's soaps, I keep jumping on soaps because everybody have to be. If it's soap, then let's see that coming out. I would often laugh when I go to the store and I pick up a bottle of Ting. It's not made here. I remember when we used to bring in the bro sodas and everybody was drinking bro. Now that disappeared and they got chubby. The only thing that we've had consistently is water. But there's room for so much more. You want to make a manufacturing business, produce some sodas.
We'll talk about this off camera.
Off camera, because it might steal the idea. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been another excellent episode of Progress Report. I think we've kept it to time today.
Yeah, we did.
We got the information out. It was very important. I am pleased. Mrs. Petty Barrett, are you pleased?
Yes, I am. I just have one more tidbit for persons to apply to vernicia.hodge at gov.ai, vernicia.hodge at gov.ai. So just email Vernicia and ask her for an application form. and she'll send to you. Or you can visit the ministry and speak with Vernicia, and she'll be happy to help you.
Is there any way, I know we're wrapping up, but is there any way that this form could just be put on the government's website and people can download? And if it's not there, I'm just handing this, I like to hand tasks over to Ivan. No.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No,
we're just going to hand we're just going to hand that task over so that persons have ease of access to that.
I don't think you realize what the problem is with the government website.
We're going to
get an old technology that nobody wants to touch.
Yes, we're going to get into that.
Okay, we're getting to that.
But this is, as you said, Ivan, this has been another very informative episode. I want to thank you for being here, PS, for not taking my approach as an attack like Ivan would like people to.
It certainly wasn't. It certainly wasn't.
And I, for one, will say I look forward to welcoming you back once that other bit that we spoke about is ready and we can bring that out there.
No problem.
Great.
Thank you for having me.
It's been our pleasure, and this has been another excellent episode of Progress Report. Remember, you can stream us on your favorite podcast streaming app. We are on our local radio stations, Radio Angular, Upbeat Radio,
Advent Radio,
Rainbow FM, Cool FM. We are on KCN TV Channel 4, Digicel Cable. We are on YouTube.
Facebook.
We are on Facebook. We are in your WhatsApp. We are in your DMs. We are everywhere. That's Progress Report. We just want to keep everyone in the know because it's updates and conversations from the Government Information Service. Thank you for having me.